Okay, so now we're recording. Sorry for that. We just started. I started the show earlier, and we had like 15 minutes great for content, and basically we just didn't record. So I have to jump back straight in because we was in the middle of something, and I realized I was recording, and yeah, it's an amateur mistake, a rookie mistake. But with that, let me bring back Paulo. Paulo, welcome again. Now that we're recording,
Hello, YouTube.
and
Thanks for
yeah,
having me, man.
yeah, it is good. And I do want to go back and across a past that we spoke about. So with that, I'm going to talk about again about the introduction to Brazil, and obviously there's a lot to be known about the country. And with that, I'll hand over to you to kind of talk about the country and some of the facts about that. So yeah, go ahead, tell us about Brazil.
Nice, nice. So probably a lot of people don't know that Brasilia is the capital from Brazil, right? So the name is very similar, but usually people know Rio, São Paulo, or even Buenos Aires, which is in Argentina. It's very funny when people think that Buenos Aires is Brazilian capital and that we speak Spanish, right? So especially kind of moving to the United States and people, they ask, I'm from Brazil, say, oh, you speak Spanish? No, no, we don't speak Spanish. We can understand Spanish, but we speak Portuguese, right? So it's very funny. And Brazil is also a very big country, right? I used to say that we have many different countries inside of Brazil. So people in the north, it's different from people on the south, from the way that they were colonized, right? From people coming from different places. Brazil is also a very welcome country, so we receive people from many parts of the world. São Paulo, for instance, is the place in the world where there is more Japanese and Italian folks than kind of any other place in the world outside of their country, of course, right? So it's a very unique country. We have a lot of beautiful things. Maybe Rio is the most well known, but there are many other different places to go as well.
Yeah, and I was gonna say like when most people think of Brazil, they think of the Copacabana beach, they think of the Christ statue, and they think about I think the Sugarloaf Mountain. And which was interesting as we were talking about before is the World Cup 2014 was in Brazil. So this is actually your opportunity to witness two World Cups, right? One from Brazil when you was living there, the host nation, and again now in the US with the host nation. So tell us a little bit about Brazil, what it was like in 2014, and the preparation of this World Cup in the US right now.
Yeah, yeah. We had the World Cup back in 2014. It was a kind of a major event for Brazil. We had 12 cities kind of hosting games, so it was a challenge from the logistics perspective, right? So moving from the north of the country to the south, Brazil is a huge country, probably in the top six or top seven of the world. When we look into kind of the distance from north to south, it's even kind of bigger than in the United States, right? So just to give you an idea that there are huge distance between cities in the north like Recife or Fortaleza and the cities in the south like Porto Alegre or even São Paulo. So a lot of hours in a flight and even the weather. The weather is pretty different, right? So in the south, it's more like Europe most of the year. Kind of, it's cold. It's different from the rest of the country, which is more hot and humid, especially in the coast side. So yeah, and actually something that I didn't say in our warm up, but I would say now, actually that World Cup changed my relationship with my the national team because before that World Cup, I was teaching project management in some universities there, and I used to use the cases for the World Cup. So kind of the projects or the huge projects that they have back then for the World Cup. So initially, before the World Cup, we have a huge amount of money available for the cities to do every kind of project, right? From security, all the way to health, hospitals, infrastructure, everything, right? And at the end of the that time, actually the most of those projects, they were abandoned, or they were kind of canceled. Only the stadiums were ready, right? So the stadiums, they were ready, and probably costing much more than it was planned. And that was where I was really kind of unhappy with the situation. And actually, I was not cheering for Brazil on that World Cup. So when people say that, hey, especially our German friends say, hey, sorry for the 7-1 there. Say, hey, actually, I was cheering for each one of those goals, and yeah, I even bought a jersey from Germany from that World Cup,
Yeah.
right? Because I didn't want to kind of a success in the sport kind of erase all the wrong things that were done at the back then. So that changed a little bit my perspective on the team. So I'm not very passionate as I used to be anymore for the national team. I'm still very passionate about my team there, and that's crazy because it just make me suffer. But that's maybe we get back to that at the end of the
Yeah,
conversation.
we'll talk about the domestic game later on. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Brazil is that we mentioned about the famous sites, and then one of them is that, which I want to put up on the screen here, is Iguazu Falls.
Iguazu Falls.
And for a lot of many people, they may think that I think is part of what you say, Colombia, or there's three
No, it's
countries.
Paraguay, Argentina, and Brazil. Yeah. So and that kind of it's not only a good place to go and visit, although I had never been there, but it's a very nice place, and actually that produce a lot of energy, right? So Brazil is actually use a lot of power coming from the rivers, from the water, right? Clean power. So, and that actually creates a lot of power for Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina. So that's a very nice place to go.
Yeah, and if not that we're going to go into, but the science behind it and how the water gets there and everything is pretty fascinating. So anyone, I highly recommend, if you do plan to go to Brazil to visit, to make sure to check out Iguazu Falls as well as the common beaches that everyone is aware of. So with that, let's pivot into the World Cup and the preparation. And one of the things that's I think coming from a historical standpoint is that Brazil has always been seen as Boca Janito, if I mentioned that correctly, and about flamboyant football, stylistic football. But in recent years, I think was it the last World Cup where the players, some of the former players, were not happy with the picking of the team, where it was no longer about flair and passion and creativity, but it was more like defensive, and it was the opposite of the Brazilian way, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, touch upon that, how that has changed.
Yeah. Yeah. So I believe that what is happening in Brazil right now is that people realize that is a very profitable business, right? So we see a lot of people within clubs that their goal is just to produce players to sell, right? So, and as we were speaking before, Premier League actually changed that, right? So Premier League is a very successful case of making a business around soccer. So everyone wants to play in the Premier League right now. So, and everyone wants to sell to Premier League. And the way that the Premier League happens, the way that they play, it's different, right? So it's much more about being physical, much more being faster than actually to be more intelligent in the pitch, or to be or playing bonito, right? Or playing beautifully. So it's a different kind of game now, and people figure out that okay, let me produce players to sell. So almost every club, every people that kind of comes to the football business, they want to go that path. So with that, they learn that there are some characteristics, right? So the players need to be stronger, they need to be faster, they not necessarily need to kind of think the game, right? So what we used to say the classic number 10 that we used to have in history, right? So if you go back there, kind of Ronaldinho, Kaká, Rivaldo, Rai from the 94 World Cup. So Djalmin, Alex, all these players, number 10, right? We don't produce them anymore, right? So actually, when you look into our domestic league, these number 10s, they are coming from outside, right? So the best players, the best teams, they have number 10s coming from outside. So that is a way that the business is going, and that directs kind of our team. So if we look into the squad today, the Brazilian squad, we don't have that player anymore. I believe the number 10 is Rafinha, but Rafinha, it's kind of a player that can play in any position from the attack, from the kind of false nine through the wingers or in the middle. But he's not that guy that takes the ball and think the game and make other players to run or to play, right? So it's a different game. It's a different time, and we are even selling our players in a younger age, right? So we see players being sold at 16, 17, 18 years old, although they just can transfer when they are 18. One example, you are a Liverpool fan, so probably you're going to remember Felipe Coutinho. So he was sold when he was 15, right, to Internazionale in Italy. So he has to wait until he completed 18 years so he could transfer to Italy. But that is happening already for a few years, maybe even decades. So we don't see our players mature in Brazil anymore, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
because you mentioned earlier was Vinny Jr. Obviously, he's been at Real Madrid. Now, there is a difference between La Liga, Real Madrid, and Barcelona, and their style of play, which is a bit more possession based, less physical. But Vinny went to Real at a very early age. Endrick as well went for a very early age. So it's not only the Prem, so there is kind of a up of talent. But I know, like with the Premiership, we kind of focus on physicality, being fast, very athletic, very aggressive. And there is a kind of even in the with the Premier League fans, they're not happy with the out of the play. For example, Arsenal are known to be very physical, very direct, and almost playing rugby in the during the corners, and that's not a fan. So, but how does like because obviously we said the Premier League became it was always a bit more physical, but the rugby style is like this year. So how does that impact players like Esteval, who went to Chelsea at a very young age? I think there's some other players that Chelsea also signed. Chelsea's been signing like a lot of these young players with the ability to kind of flip them. But how does that actually impact the number 10 for the domestic league? Because you mentioned that if obviously there's players for export, which we can understand that, but there should still be the players growing up watching the likes of Ronaldinho, Rivaldo, and wanting to be that player. What happens to those players? Do they not make it, or like what happens?
yeah, I believe that the teams, even when they are in their kind of under 15, under 17 kind of games, uh, they prefer to have those wingers, those kind of faster players that actually are able to kind of attack and kind of return to kind of help defense, right? So
I can
this
hear you.
this
It's
is
fine.
actually what?
No, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah, so I believe that what happened is that they prefer the wingers now. They don't have the number 10. They kind of they don't use it anymore. So we just stopped producing that, especially because that is a different type of game that we don't see anymore. No, not in Brazil. So those kind of players they are usually moved to be a winger or to be a more defensive, what they call box to box, right? So that kind of more midfielder, defensive midfielder than actually the number 10, the guy that do not come back to kind of help in defense. So it's and this the football as a whole, right? The tactics and everything. So The teams are now more compact, right? So the lines are more closer to each other. So that number 10 was the guy that used to kind of fluctuate through those lines. But as the whole thing kind of changed, I believe that it is harder to have that player. So in Brazil, actually, we have those number 10s coming from outside.
Wow. That sounds like strange, right? It's like almost like I guess you'd say importing coffee to Brazil, right? So,
Exactly. It's weird. It's weird, and it's interesting that it's happening. So when we look at the successful teams in Brazil, their number 10s, they actually are from other countries.
that's like it's very sad in a way because if you look at the number 10 jersey as a whole, the Brazilian number 10 is iconic, right? From Pele, as you mentioned, at least in my generation, Rivaldo, Ronaldinho,
Ronaldinho. Yeah.
like you said, and for those lesser known that I remember, is like João was a very talented player, and there was always competition for that role. It wasn't like there was one number 10. Like even like you mentioned, Philip Coutinho was a number 10, and there was always almost production line. The fact that production line stopped is very sad to see that. But I think that this is a kind of a trait of world football as a whole because it's not only Brazil that's been impacted by the number 10 position. Even like for example, Italy, they used to have Baggio, if I remember correctly, right? Zola, and now, I guess they're struggling to fill that void because they missed a few World Cups. That transition from going from creative football to more winger based, attack based, and more structural. And I know, like now, we always go high pressing and defensive formation, defensive structures, and getting it back. We understand that's what it takes to win. But I think one thing that's happening is like Paris Saint Germain. I'm not sure how much you're following them, but they're kind of bucking the trend in terms of playing beautiful football, and it almost is the total football, right? But which is the Dutch philosophy, where the players play multiple positions and they rotate, right? So if you look at, I think Luis Enrique was saying that he wants a team where any player can move into another position, so that the opposition doesn't know like how to challenge. Now, obviously, for some attacking players or some very gifted players, they can do that, but I can see where that number 10 becomes a challenge. And for me, and being a Liverpool fan, we signed Florian Wirtz, right? And he struggled a lot because of trying to find where that number 10 fits in. And we are hoping that this year with the new manager Andoni Iraola, that he may be able to take more advantage of that because the previous manager was more of the classic pass and control the flow of the game, which for the 10 is always like, when there's a counter attack or something, they get in that space and they can create the magic and, create that beautiful style of play. But I think if we look at the leagues, like we say, the French league, I think is very physical and direct. The German league is very physical and direct. Italian league still the same as it was, and I think that's one of the reasons that its national team is being impacted by that. And I think Spain is kind of adapting a bit, so we should see that. So back to Brazil, obviously, this is what we're talking about. Raise that. So tell us about some of the players. Obviously, for like I would know, obviously, Vini Junior and maybe Andrew Cunha as a name. Obviously, players that play in the Premiership, Cunha. And but yeah, tell us about some of the team from the goalkeeper all the way to the attack.
Yeah. Just before that, I believe that you brought a very good example with PSG in terms of what happened with the number 10, right? So actually, I believe that PSG is a good example of that because they are what used to be the defensive midfielder. They are talent players, right? And now they are not only good at defending, but they are able to kind of step on the box and score goals, right? So Vitinha is a good example of that, right? So Vitinha and all those midfield players from PSG. On Brazil team, I believe that we have many good players, although we don't have a team yet, right? And although we also don't not have that star that we used to have, right? So I believe that every World Cup we had a kind of a big star on the team, at least one, right? And so we put our hope on that specific player. So I believe that now the hope of Brazilian people is actually more on the coach and say, okay, we have good players, right? They are not bad, but will the coach be able to bring the best on all of those good players at the same time so actually we can beat the opponents, right? So starting from the goalkeepers, I believe we are very well there with Alisson and Ederson. I believe those goalkeepers that used to be in the Premier League. Alisson is still with Liverpool. Probably you like him.
Yeah, but
I believe
his kicking is his legs, his hamstring is not the same. So you best not rely on him to kick the ball very far. Maybe a small pass,
yeah,
but yeah,
yeah. He's aging, right? So I
yeah.
believe it will be his third World Cup, if I'm not wrong. So he's aging, but I believe he is a good keeper. In the defense, I believe that we also have good central backs, right, with Marquinhos and Gabriel Magalhães, although he lost the last penalty in the uh, Champions League. But I believe we are well served there. On the right and left back, I believe that's where we probably, compared to previous years, compared to kind of where my generation grew up seeing players like Cafu, Roberto Carlos, Marcelo. This is where actually the players we have there are bats, right? So we don't know them. We don't know if they are going to play well. Even one of the starters now was cut because he got injured. And instead of calling another right back, it's calling a midfielder for his place. So we are going to improvise there and having, for instance, Danilo, who used to play as a right back, but he has been playing as a central back back in Brazil. So some changes there. In the midfield, I believe we have good midfielders as well, right? Probably not the best of the worlds, but they are okay. I believe I really like Bruno Guimarães and Casemiro. I believe they are strong there. And then we have wingers and attackers, right? So this is where we don't have a good player to be playing that number 10, right? So you need to figure out a way to play without the number 10, the guy who will think the game, but kind of using wingers. And then we have plenty of them. I think that they are kind of almost equivalent, right? So there's no one that is much better than the other. I believe that anyone that can go there, they can play well. I would personally kind of look for Ryan, who is on Bournemouth,
Yeah.
right? I hope that Iraola brings him with to
We too, me
Liverpool.
too. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that kid is amazing. That kid is amazing. So I hope that he can move to Liverpool soon. But yeah, in the attackers, I believe that we have many of them. Vini Jr. probably is the one that we expect the most, right? So he won some awards recently. So but Vini Jr. kind of we don't see him playing in the national Brazilian national team as he plays in Real Madrid, right? So we don't see the same level of game, and this is one of the things that kind of it's kind of the doubts in Brazilians' minds, right? So is he going to play like we saw him already kind of shining in some of Real Madrid games, or we are going to see that bureaucratic Vini Jr. kind of not being able to make good plays in Brazilian games? So this is kind of the question mark in our heads and say, okay, are they going to play very well like they sometimes do in their teams or what, right?
So actually, it was interesting because Endrick obviously didn't have a good spell at Real Madrid, and he went on loan to I think it's Lyon,
Leon,
right? Yeah,
yeah.
and there he was scoring almost for fun. Every other game he was scoring, and all types of goals, like whether it's in the box, outside the box. How did his performances in League One? resonate with the fans in Brazil, and what are the fans expecting from him for the national team? Is there still high hopes, or is it been like it's been a disaster?
Yeah, I believe that Endrick and most of those players that they are in the same spot, right? So we saw Endrick doing great things in the Brazilian league, right? So he was kind of an outlier in Brazil. Kind of he was playing very well. That's why he was sold to Real Madrid. I believe that it's a huge jump, right? So when you leave Brazil, and most of those kids, they have a very poor they come from a very poor place, right? So when they get to football and they start making success, uh, a lot of things happen in their lives. Everything changes, right? So moving to a different country is a huge jump, especially going to Real Madrid. And sometimes, depending on the team, kind of a moment, the expectations that people put inside of those players, they can be higher than they are able to deliver initially, right? So I believe it was a good move for him to go to Lyon. I believe that he was able to score a few goals there, get back confidence, and he got his spot in the squad. But I believe that because of what happened in Real Madrid, we also don't have high hopes, right, with him. We know that they can deliver good games, they can deliver goals, score goals. Um, and this is back again to the coach, right? So will the coach kind of bring them the confidence, bring them a good environment so they can shine on the World Cup?
So I think there's you're making it sound like there's a lot of pressure on Carlo Ancelotti, right? So that seems a bit strange that the pressure is on the coach so much, because I think historically, at least as I can remember growing up, right, Philippe Scolari didn't have, I don't think, that much pressure as because it was about the players and is he facilitating them, right? So it wasn't
Yeah,
so much that Scolari will make the players better. It was, can he make the personalities egos match? But the players, we need them to work.
yeah.
It seems with Ancelotti, the role is slightly different in that these players are not that good, and he needs to work some of the magic that he did at Real Madrid and other teams to kind of get the team going.
Yeah, and I believe there's a lot into this Ancelotti story because what happened was just after the last World Cup. That was in December, right? If you remember, it was in December,
Yeah.
so it was kind of in a different season. So after that, the coach Titi he left the team after being there for many years. The last two World Cups was with Titi. So and then the president of CBF, that is the entity that coordinates soccer or football in Brazil, uh, there was a change, and the new guy coming, he wants Ancelotti for that job. But Ancelotti was with Real Madrid at that point, and he was doing really well. It was when they won the last Champions League, right? So uh, this president, he was waiting for a promise that Ancelotti could go to Brazil at the end of that season. So he put kind of an interim coach at that point that was for a year. Then Ancelotti renewed his contract with Real Madrid after winning the Champions League, right? So then with that, they actually hired a coach um, in Brazil. So in this cycle, we had the interim, we had one coach. After 6, 7 months, he was fired. They brought another coach. And then finally they were able to bring Carlo Ancelotti, who was the original plan. But two years, almost 3 years later, right? So he has very few time to do this. And also, there was a lot of noise in Brazil because I don't remember having someone from outside of Brazil kind of coaching the Brazilian team. It was always a Brazilian.
Yeah.
So there was a debate inside of Brazil, people against kind of having a foreign kind of coming to Brazil. There were people supporting that because Ancelotti, we know that what he's capable of to do. So the pressure is more on this side, but I believe that we have hope on
Yeah.
his work, right? Because he was able to make a team of stars in Real Madrid to play together, kind of almost like you described Scolari back then. I believe we saw that kind of behavior in Ancelotti, so we have hopes. I believe there are some pressure on it, but that's regardless because they already renew his contract for the next cycle as well. So regardless of what happens on this World Cup, he will continue as the Brazilian coach moving forward.
That is very interesting, and actually, that's a good point because we didn't mention we're talking about the number 10 of Brazil, but historically, the managers is always from Brazil, and I
Yeah,
think this is like you said, the first manager appointed from overseas. Actually, it's very interesting because England did the same thing, right? Thomas Tuchel, or I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but this is not the first time, but they had
yeah,
Fabio Capello, they had Sven Goran Eriksson. But usually, kind of like Germany is being seen as the big rival. To have a German coach managing England is always kind
exactly.
of strange. But as you mentioned, football is heading in a different direction, and it's a results-based industry. And what you're describing about Brazil actually sounds a lot like England, because if you look at the England team, uh, the lot of the big name players have been left out. Uh, and a lot of the fans are like, why did this player not make it, that player not make it? But the manager, there's only a certain amount of players, and they need to pick the profiles. And I think that's where a lot of fans seem to forget is that the profile of football now, like you said, doesn't accommodate the 10. So if you have players who are, like I think Cole Palmer is in the 10, or Morgan Gibbs White, or in that attacking area, if they're going with wingers, you can't really have that space for that 10 unless you change the structure of the team, and you change the structure of the midfield. And once you start doing that, then you lose your midfield and the defense, and it is a mess, right? So
Yes.
these structures, we're seeing this across global football. So back to the Brazilian setup in terms of, as I mentioned, the team. What do you think is going to be the prediction for the group stages, and how far do you think they're going to go?
Yeah, I I believe it would be an interesting match with Morocco, right? So I saw your episode with Murat, and you mentioned the African teams, right? And um, Morocco is coming in from a very good World Cup last time, right? They kind of still have good players
Very good
over
young
there.
squad.
We lost to them. So actually, the first game after the last World Cup that Brazil played was against Morocco, and we lost 2-1. So that will be the game that will, and this will be our first game, right? So we will play against Morocco, and that will decide if we are going to go first or second place. I believe there's no way that we will not classify right in the group stage. Um, with all respect to Scotland, but I believe that the minimum we should do is to win. Haiti, I don't even know how they classify to the World Cup, man. Right? So until a few years ago, um, yeah, they didn't have a team. We were playing there kind of to raise money to help them with the natural devastation that they had there. But they made a way, right? With 48 teams, it is very hard to not classify. And actually,
Don't tell
Brazil.
Italy that. Don't tell Italy that they're gonna qualify. So
Yeah, man, I don't know how they were able to do that, right? So a lot of spots in Brazil. So in the Common Ball Confederation, they have 10 teams, right? And six of them classify directly, and the seventh place would go to kind of how they
oh,
call
knockout,
rare.
knockout,
Yeah.
knockout.
So yeah, it's hard to not classify here in South America or even kind of in the CONCACAF. But anyway, so I believe it will be the first game will define, and the first game is always that one that we have a lot of pressure, right? So there's a pressure on kind of especially in Brazil, right? So I believe that Morocco will actually have an advantage. Not that they are favorite, right? I believe that Brazil is still favorite, but I believe they have an advantage because the pressure is on the other side, and they can take advantage of that. So that will define if they are going to be first or second place. And it's interesting because if they go second place, I believe that they will play probably Netherlands as the first of the other group, right? But then if they pass Netherlands, that is probably also kind of easy teams in the next round. If they go in first place, it would be between two second places. So again, I believe that it's easy to get to at least the quarterfinals, right? After that, I believe that will depend on the moment. It will be on details. I believe that the good teams should reach the quarterfinal, and I believe that's where we are going really to see what level the teams are playing, right? So I would expect at minimum a quarterfinal to be reached. But I see that with the players we have, I mentioned that they are not as spectacular, but they are good players. And in a good day, they could even win the World Cup, right? So I believe that
Yeah.
they can do that. But it will depend on the details, how much attention that you have to the details, so they can go. I would expect that maybe I would say if I need to kind of I don't bet, but if I need to put my money, probably would be kind of a semifinal.
So that's good. One thing I would say about the whole World Cup, and especially the last few World Cups, is that never rule out the underdog. Because what was it? Last World Cup, I think the first or second game, Argentina was Saudi Arabia, and then they went on to
Yep.
win the World Cup. And then if you look at the last World Cup, there was many teams that people were like, okay, what they're doing in the semi-final or in the quarterfinal or in the knockout stages, and they were winning. Morocco being one of them. So it is definitely, as you mentioned, football has evolved and changed, and
Yep.
now it's about tactics and and the who's going to fight or be motivated. One thing is that obviously with a lot of the favorites, right, and like whether it's Brazil or whether it's the European teams, all the players have been playing a whole long season of football. So a lot of them are coming up to the World Cup and they're going to be pretty bit tired, and some of them may be looking for a vacation because it's the end of the season.
Yeah.
So so that's one factor. The other factor is the other team that they may be playing, they may, just okay, this team's not a good team and take it for granted, right? Because we have one eye focus on the next game, and it's always that's where the opportunity can be lost there. And speaking about Morocco, obviously they won the African Nations Cup or African Cup of Nations. They won it after a review, right? Obviously, because Senegal walked off the pitch and came back on. So technically, there's an asterisk there, right? Is it Morocco? Is it
Yeah.
Senegal? Whoever won. But both of them were playing good football. We can't say that they were bad. They're both good, solid teams. Senegal is a very good, solid team.
Yeah.
Morocco is a very good, solid team. Very good young players. The young players coming through are very good, and they have almost production line because what's happening is a lot of them are raised in France, and there's so much talent in the French first team. So they're like, I'm never going to make it in the French first team. So they'll go because they're eligible to play for Morocco or any other African team,
Yeah.
and then they play there. And we look at, for example, the game recently between France and Cote d'Ivoire. Uh, Desiree Doué plays for France, and his brother, I forget his first name, plays for Ivory
Yeah.
Coast. And you kind of see that now where the African countries, their players are getting better and better and better because a lot of them are playing in Europe now, right? So they're getting
Yeah.
used to the tactics and the styles of what they're playing. And that's why, like for me, I think I said the other day that I see an African teams going very far. Not one, I see multiple going very far because of factors of the weather. Because right now in the US, especially in the southern states, it's very hot, and they will be able to adapt to that far better than players who are not really common to playing that temperature. And also, like as a whole, more and more leagues are getting stronger, and this is where we're going to pivot on talking about domestic leagues. Is because if you look at well, Cristiano Ronaldo went to the Saudi league, and a lot of players followed. Yes, there's a lot of money there, but the quality improved. And I don't know if you watched the Club World Cup from last year, but I was watching Al Hilal play Man City and some other teams, and they played really good football. They didn't win the games, but the style, the players' ability and stuff was there. So we know that that's there. Uh, and MLS, obviously Messi coming over. Now MLS has a bit more. It's a bit more difficult because the league is structured by the league manages the clubs essentially, right? So there's only so much players they can sign. But I do see that the quality is obviously getting better here because it's not like Inter Miami is dominating everything, right? It's still competitive. When you take all those players now from all those facets, right? From whether they're playing in the Saudi league, whether they're playing in MLS, whether they're playing in Europe, whether they're playing in Africa or South America, it is going to be an exciting World Cup because whilst some people may say, "Oh, 48 countries is going to mean is bad," I'm not sure how much you follow the AFCON, but a lot of the social media is going like, "You need to see this game. It's two random teams playing. They could be it was a group stages, but because these smaller teams, there's no fear. They're going there and they're not going there to think that it's a big team. It's like we expect to lose. Let's just go out. Let's just go out and show the world what we have. So and that's why when it comes to this World Cup, whilst they're like when I spoke about Turkey, they're looking to go through to the next round. Brazil's looking to go to the next round. I do foresee that it may not be as easy because of the underdog and the makeup of that. So as we transition to the domestic leagues, one is what's because I don't know this and should have done a bit more on this. What's the name of the Brazilian league, like the equivalent of the Premier League? What are the top teams in that league? And explain that you're a fan of one of those teams, and I think that's Vasco da Gama, right? So to show you, right?
Vasco da Gama, yes.
At least I know that. So yeah.
Well, there are actually the league has two names, right? So usually, I believe it's formally kind of Serie A, like Italy, right? So Serie A, and we have Serie A, Serie B, Serie A, right? And Serie B. But actually, we call them informally Brasileirão, right? It's kind of the kind of Brazilian, but kind of put in a how can I explain that? It's big, right? So kind of almost like big Brazilian football.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. So it's Brasileirão. We have kind of the same model as Premier League, right? So it's 20 teams, and they play each other in home and away games. After 38 games, they have kind of who has more points is the winner. In the past years, we don't have one Manchester City, right? That is kind of a container every year. Actually, we have two of them. It's Palmeiras and Flamengo. Both teams they played the last World Cup, right? So the Club World Cup. Palmeiras is from São Paulo. Flamengo is from Rio. Something interesting for who is from the United States here, where we usually have one soccer club per city, right? In Brazil, Rio has four big clubs, right? São Paulo has four big clubs. So we have many teams from the same city. Most of them are from São Paulo or Rio. My team is in Rio. I'm not from Rio. I'm actually from the middle of Brazil, close to Brasilia. But I support Vasco da Gama, who used to be a good team in the 80s and 90s, right? The last kind of significant tournament that we won was back in 2000 with Romario, but the last 15, 20 years was not very good for us. We were relegated three, four times, but now we are back and kind of doing an okay job. We are not still kind of in the top of the league, but this is the thing. I believe that the Brazilian league is the most difficult in the world in the sense that we have so many teams that can be contenders, right? So I mentioned Flamengo and Palmeiras because they are very well structured financially. Uh, the way that the clubs in Brazil they are managed is very amateur, right? So we start seeing the clubs becoming or changing from an associative model to a company model just in the past maybe 4 or 5 years now, right? And this is not mandatory. So there are some teams that they decided that okay, we will stop being a kind of association and we are going to become a company, right? So it's actually having a professional management, having an owner that because that's not something that most of the clubs in Brazil they have, right? They have this association model that is probably not very known from people nowadays.
Oh wow, I definitely didn't know that because I always thought like the Brazilian clubs were like any other clubs around the world where there was like an owner or at least kind of like a fixed group that manages the club. And so interesting about Vasco da Gama. I think Coutinho went back to play there recently, right?
Say it again.
Philip Coutinho played there recently, right? At Vasco da Gama.
Yeah, yes. Coutinho went to Vasco. He played 1.5 year there, but then in the beginning of this year, he decided to kind of end his contract, and I believe that he decided to retire after that.
Did where did Memphis Depay go to?
Corinthians. Corinthians is
Memphis.
also a big club from in São Paulo, so Memphis is in Corinthians there as well.
So is that would be an example of a 10 coming
Exactly,
from
exactly. And not only him, so Lingard from England is also in Corinthians now.
oh wow. Wow.
Yeah,
He went to Korea and then now he's wow, I didn't know that. So
yeah, he's there.
that is interesting because like growing up, it was always a number 10 you were looking at from a player from Brazil. Now you have an English player going from England to Brazil. So that is a very sharp contrast in terms of what was historically where talent you would look for, kind of flipping that narrative. The other thing was also is that this is just from a question. Did Vampeta play for Vasco da Gama?
No, Vampeta played for Corinthians.
Are the kits similar, or am I like
They are. So yeah, Vasco is this black with the white kind of running over
sash?
here
Yeah,
and this red. And Corinthians is white and black.
it's black and white. Okay, it's just because that for some reason I can't remember the name because
Yeah,
it was a
Vasco and
unique
Corinthians they played the first FIFA World uh,
club.
Club World Cup, right? That was back in 2000. So we had the Real Madrid, we have Manchester United there, and Vasco and Corinthians they end up deciding that championship in 2000, and Corinthians won.
It's just because a lot of it's time flies, and when you talk about 2000, I'm thinking that's like 6 years ago, but like that's 26 years ago. So
Definitely.
it is a long time passing. So that's so the last thing I want to talk about is like the MLS. I know that actually before we talk about the MLS, you do travel a lot to watch games, as we can see about the scars behind you. Are you going to be traveling to any of the World Cup games this year?
No, no, I will not. The closest I have here would be Miami, but man, it was very expensive. So
Yeah.
I like to bring my daughter and my wife with me, so that would be an expensive
Yeah,
thing. And like I said, I'm not that big of a fan of Brazil anymore, right? But Brazil will play here the third game against Scotland in Miami. But maybe because of that, the prices were very, very
I've
expensive.
heard some of the prices being for some games in the millions. So I don't know what happened. Somewhere between whatever the price, I don't know how it gets to million, but it's becoming a not only in football or in soccer, it's happening in other sports. I think uh, recently there was a OKC versus the Spurs, the basketball game, and also courtside tickets there being for a million as well. So I don't know what's happened to sports in recent years, but it's become now where some of the ticket prices are insanely high. I mean, we can't even call it insane if it's $1 million because
Yes.
it's not like you're gonna get that seat for a season or something like that. You're talking about one night, so it's absolutely insane. But it is what it is. As we wrap up, I just want to kind of, who's your prediction to win the World Cup?
Well, I wish that Brazil could win, but I'm not very confident on that. I believe that Spain is a good contender, and I believe, and maybe this is the difference, right? Because I believe that every other contender, like England, France, Argentina, uh, they have something going on with them that probably is not making them very strong. I believe that Spain probably will be the one winning this World Cup.
My dark horse of the World Cup is Portugal.
Portugal.
Yeah, not they're not really a dark horse, but like
I
you have Vitinha, you have João Neves from PSG, you have Bruno Fernandes from Manchester United, who was like the
Yeah,
player of the year. You have their defense is usually good. They have Nuno Mendes. They have Ronaldo, still Ronaldo, even though he's 40, as if he can get a goal. They have a very good core and a very good spine. And last year they won the Nations League, and with that midfield, if Vitinha gets time on the ball and he can put his foot on the ball and control the tempo of the game, they're going to be very difficult to beat. So that's why I think for me, I see them as a very good contender. France is also very good for me because their squad depth. I don't know if you saw their attacking options, but their attacking options like Mbappe, Osman
yeah.
Dembele, Ryan Cherki, uh, Michael Olise. Um, they had Marcus Thuram. They have, I think, I'm not sure if he made the squad, Maghalis Akaluche. They have players, but they're very top loaded, right? They're very top heavy. They're very good, a lot of
But
wingers, a lot of
this
strikers.
but this is where I believe that this is the hard thing to manage, right? Because
Yes.
everybody is going to be the
Want to-
star,
Yeah.
right? They want to be the one making the difference, and this is the hard thing. So and I believe that they were also fighting with the confederation or something because of some things there. So there's a lot of outside of the pitch that maybe can influence kind of their
Yeah.
results. So that's why I'm not very confident. I'm there with you. They have plenty of very good players, but I believe that this maybe can fire back because there will be a lot of ego. There will be a lot of I'm better than him and this kind of thing. So I'd like to see Portugal winning. That would be amazing.
Yeah. For me as well is because even though I'm a Liverpool fan, I've always, well, since Ronaldo left from Man United, I always kind of like followed his career and seeing, because for me, when I look at football, I always look at it not just from a number 10 perspective or, that perspective. Look at, okay, if I was to build a football, if someone told me, like, like in the games, create a perfect football, I was like, okay, there'll be a tool because you need that. They need to be strong. They need to be fast. They need to be good with both feet. They need to be good in the air. That's it.
Yeah.
If you look at him from a purely specimen standpoint, he has speed, he has strength, he's good with both feet, good shot power, both feet, good technique, and he's very good in the air. So from if you was to say, you take that right, then you add the winning mentality. And for me right now, there's three players that have exceptional winning mentality, right? And the money hasn't really impacted them. You have Ronaldo,
Yeah.
you have Messi, and you have Mohamed Salah from Liverpool. Well, not longer Liverpool. because these guys have basically they spend money on their bodies to maintain fitness, strength levels, and to be playing at a high level for so long. And when you have that money and people, whatever it is, it's very easy to lose motivation and just start relaxing and enjoying life. But these guys, they just want to win, win, win. So whether the team, they're going to drag the team. So that's why it's like I would say Argentina still has a very good chance. Obviously, I think Portugal has a good chance of a good team, and it's about chemistry. And for me, I was like, when I look at it right now, there are a number that, just like the Brazilian team as you're mentioning, there's no great player. I wouldn't say there's any great teams right now, but there are a lot of good teams with a lot of good players, and it is. I'm looking at this World Cup as almost like as a neutral because there's like so much unknown and there's a lot of excitement in that. So I am looking forward to that. Actually, I do want to ask you one more question. I answered this a few times, but you mentioned about Rayan to Liverpool. Why would is it just because for him to move to a bigger club to progress his career, or have you heard something, or because of the coach Iriola or something like that?
No, no, because he actually came from Vasco, right? So he was playing
Okay.
to Vasco. He went to Bournemouth. He was playing well. And the kind of the news that we got in Brazil that was he was getting well with Iraola. So when Iraola kind of moved, say, okay, maybe he wants to get Ryan there as well. So
Yeah,
um,
because we do need wingers. So yeah, a
and
right
that
winger.
would make some of that money go back to Vasco. So that's why I also want
Ah,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's
No, so
the longer.
yeah, not sure if you know, but FIFA has something that for every transfer, so a percentage of that transfer actually go back to the clubs that form that player. So
Mhm.
as Ryan was formed completely in Vasco, Vasco has 3% of every transaction of that player. Kind
Oh,
of,
okay.
yeah. So every time that he's sold, then 3% of that goes to Vasco.
Oh, that's good. So, the rumors are the Bournemouth would be like 90 to 100 million. So that's $3 million pounds, right? So it's like maybe $4 million. So that's a good. The other thing is it depends upon the player's contract because some of them they may have a 10% sell-on clause or 20% sell-on clause. So depending upon what Vasco did, because what happens is for some teams, especially like so, you look at these middle-sized clubs in the Premier League. They also have a sell to sustain model, right? Because Bournemouth has a very small stadium. I think it's 10 to 20,000, so they're not making much money
Yeah.
from attendance. So they have to make the money from selling players. So now, if there's a 20% release sell-on clause, so that means if they sell for 50 million, then was 10 million is
Yeah, no,
going
no, but
to.
Vasco doesn't have that. That
Oh,
clause
okay.
already. Yeah, no, no, they don't
So
have that 20. I would like to have that. I would wish, but unfortunately, well, what was told is that this model is not available for Premier League clubs. They don't do that because of the league's rules. Usually that happens with every other country, but not in England. They said.
no, okay, that's news to me because the Premier League clubs do it to other teams all the time. So, for example, Liverpool, we sold a few players. One of them we actually sold to Tottenham, which was Dominic Solanke years ago. There was a sell-on clause, right? And so this when sorry, they sold him to Bournemouth. When Bournemouth sold him to Tottenham, Liverpool I think made like 8 or 10 million because of the sell-on clause. So
No, no,
this
but
is
among them, right? But I believe that when they buy, they can't leave
oh
something back then.
okay, okay. So that's very interesting. So well, let's hope that happens because like right now, obviously Salah moved on, so there's no right wing, right? So the rumors are between Yan Diomande, who's going to be like 100 million, Bradley Barcola, and because Iraola come now, there's some murmurs of Rayan. Now the thing is about Rayan because he moved 6 months ago, Bournemouth saying they're not willing to sell, but if enough money comes in depending on performances of the World Cup, things can change.
Yeah.
Now, the thing with Yan Diomande is PSG are also after him. So if he goes to PSG, then I can foresee that Liverpool may want to go for Rayan. So it's going to be very interesting. And again, the World Cup, I am excited. So hopefully it will go well. So thanks, Paulo. Thanks so much, even though I forgot to record the first time. So
No, it was a
next
good
time,
warm-up. Thank you
yeah.
for that.
Thanks. And then maybe next time we'll talk about some other games that's going to come up in the World Cup, like especially if we see Brazil get to the next round, I might reach out to you again, and we may have a follow up to see, what's the talk of the town, what you may be hearing that others may not hear, and and take it from there. So thanks, Paulo, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye.